Welcome back to the course of Introduction to Software Engineering lecture. This video is brought to you by Newton's Group of Institutions. This is Arvind Egireddy from the Department of Computer Science and Engineering. So today, let us discuss the topic of software engineering introduction. And at the end of this lecture, we will be able to identify the scope and necessity of the software engineer and identify the causes and solution for the software crisis. And in our second lecture, we differentiate a piece of program from the software products. That is, we study about programs versus software products. And in our third lecture, we study about the evolution of the software engineering design. Here we identify the important features of structured programming. We explain how the software design techniques have evolved over the last 50 years. And finally, we will differentiate between exploratory style and modern style of software development. And in our fourth video, we will discuss about the different life cycle models so that we will be able to explain what is life cycle model, explain what problems would occur if no life cycle model is followed. And here we identify the different software life cycle models. We identify the different phases of classical waterfall model. And we identify the activities which are being undertaken in each phase. And we identify the shortcomings of the classical waterfall model. And we identify the phase entry and phase exit criteria of each phase. And also, for more videos on software engineering, please follow my channel by subscribing to it. Software engineering is an engineering approach for software development. We can alternatively view it as a symmetric collection of past experiences. And this experience is arranged in the form of methodologies and guidelines. So, a small program can be written without using software engineering principles. But if one wants to develop a large software product, then software engineering principles are indispensable to achieve a good quality software with cost effectively. So these definitions can be elaborated with the help of building a construction analogy. Suppose we have a friend who asks to build a small wall as shown in this particular figure. We would be able to do that by using some common sense. So here we will get the building materials like bricks, cement, etc. And we will then build the wall like this, what we can see in this particular figure. So a small wall can be built. But what would happen if the same friend asked us to build a large multi-storied building like this in this figure? So a multi-story building, we don't have a very good idea about building such a huge complex. And it will be very difficult to extend our ideas about a small wall construction into constructing a large building. And even if we try to build a large building, the failure may come in several forms. The building might collapse during the construction stage itself due to ignorance of the basic theories concerning to the strength of materials. The construction might get unduly delayed since we may not prepare proper estimates and detailed plans regarding the type and quantity of the raw materials that are being required, the time at which these are required, etc. So in short, to be successful in constructing a building of large magnitude, one needs a good understanding of various civil and architectural engineering techniques such as analysis, estimation, prototyping, planning, designing, and testing. Similarly, in the case with the software development projects, for sufficiently small sized problems, one might proceed according to the one's intuition and succeed. Though the solution may have several imperfections, cost more or take longer to complete, etc. But the failure is almost certain if one without a sound understanding of the software engineering principles undertakes a large scale of software development work. Now, what is wrong with this exploratory style? So here, a problem with developing such a large commercial programs is that the complexity and difficulty levels of the program increases exponentially with their size as shown in this particular figure. For example, a program of size 1000 lines of code has some complexity, but a program with 10,000 lines is not just 10 times more difficult to develop, but may as well as turn out to be 100 times more difficult unless software engineering principles are used. So in such situations, software engineering techniques come to rescue. Now let us see what is exploratory programming development style. So it refers to an informal development style in which the programmer uses his own intuition to develop a program rather than making use of the systematic body of the knowledge which is being categorized under software engineering discipline. This style of development, which gives complete freedom to the programmer to choose activities which they like to develop software. And this style does not offer any rule to start the developing any software. So this style of software development is only used for developing a small programs. Nowadays, this style is only used by students in their labs to complete their assignments. So this style is not really used in industries nowadays. In an exploratory development scenarios, effort and time are required to develop a professional software. It increases with increase in programming size. Increase in development effort and time with program size has been indicated in the following figure, what you can see on the screen. So here in this figure, the thick line, this plots to represent the case in which the exploratory style is used to develop a program. Here, as the program size increases, required effort and time increases almost exponentially. For large problems, it would take too long and cost too much to be practically meaningful to develop programs under exploratory style of development. So exploratory development approach is said to be breakdown after the size of the program to be developed increases beyond certain value. Now this thin solid line, this thin solid line is used to represent the case when development is carried out using the software engineering principles. So in this case, it becomes possible to solve a problem with effort and time that is almost linear to the programming side. And this dotted line is used to represent the case when development is carried out by automated machine. So in this, increase in effort and time with size would be even closer to the linear increase with the size. So exploratory style, which causes perceived difficulty of a problem to grow exponentially due to the human cognitive limitations. We may still wonder that when software engineering principles are used, why does the curve not becoming completely linear? The answer is that it is very difficult to apply decomposition and extraction principles to completely overcome the problem complexity. So using this model, there is exponential growth of development time and effort with the problem size, and large sized softwares, they become almost impossible using this style of development. So this style of development results in unambiguity code because programming without planning always results in understanding and poor quality of code. Also, it is difficult to use this style when there is a proper developing team, because this is the style every developer uses his own intuition to develop the software. So the interpretation based on human cognitive mechanisms. Here, the human memory can be thought to be made up of two distinct parts. One is short-term memory and the other one is long-term memory. If you are asked the question, if it is 10 a.m. now, how many hours are remaining today? So here, first 10 a.m. would be stored in the short-term memory. Next, a day is 24 hours long would be fetched from the long-term memory into short-term memory. And finally, the mental manipulation unit would compute the difference, 24 minus 10. So here is that how our brain looks. So long-term memory, and we will be having short-term memory. So we will have processing center. What is short-term memory? So an item that is being stored in the short-term memory can get lost either due to the decay with the time or display by newer information. So here, this restricts the time for which an item is stored in the short-term memory for few tens of seconds. However, an item can be retained longer in the short-term memory by recycling. For this, let us just consider a common example. So here, if you can see, suppose if anyone asks what is today's breakfast, you can answer. What is yesterday's breakfast? You can answer. What is day before? 2 days before, 3 days before. But if it is going, what is the breakfast what you have taken 6 months before? No, there is no answer, because that will be in the short-term memory. In the similar fashion, suppose if you have maybe at your right now, just you ask who is your, what is the name of your benchmate or backside bench friend in your 10th class after 20 years? No. So you don't remember. Of course, you are friends for 10 years from LKG to 10th class. Maybe you are together, entire class, you people, you have, but after some days, what will happen is the short-term memory will erase the data. Whereas while sleeping also, if somebody asks you, what is your father name? What is your mother name? That we don't forget, because it will be in the long-term memory. So here, let us see what is an item. So an item is any set of related information. A character such as A or a digit such as 5 can be an item, or a word, a sentence, a story, or even a picture can each be a single item. So here each item normally occupies one place in the memory, And when you are able to relate several different items together by using chunking, the information that should normally occupy several places and can be stored using only one place in the memory. Now here, what is this chunking? What is meant by chunking? So here, chunking means if you are given a binary number, say 11001010101001, it may prove very hard for you to understand and remember this particular number. But the octal form of this number 6251, that is by breaking this number 33 would be very easier. So you have managed to create a chunk of 3 items each. This is what is chunking. So now let us see the different evidences of short-term memory. In many of our day-to-day experiences, suppose you like up a number from the telephone directory and start dialing it. If you find the number to be busy, you can dial the number again after a few seconds almost effortlessly without having a look up the directory. But after several days, you may not remember the number at all and would need to consult the directory again. So this is what happens. So initially, so few of us, because nowadays from phone book we will be calling. So if we are dialing the number, we will remember it. But if for long duration of time, if you are not calling to that particular, we will forget the number. Similar with the bank ATM PIN numbers also. If you are not using for a long time, then we will forget our PIN. That's the reason we have to store it somewhere, because those values, they will be stored in the short-term memory. Now let us see what is magic number 7. So this magic number 7 is if a person deals with 7 or less number of items, these would be easily be accommodated in the short-term memory. So he can easily understand it. As the number of new information increases beyond 7, it becomes exceedingly difficult to understand it. So that is the reason we call 7 as a magic number. So we can remember up to 7 items. If more than 7 items, sometimes so maybe 7, 8, 9. But at normal, on an average, the human brain can remember 7 items. That's why this 7 is called as an magical number. Now let us see the implications of the program development. So here, a software engineer helps to reduce the programming complexity, and a small program just having just a few variables and is within the easy grasp of an individual. As the number of independent variables in the program increases, it quickly exceeds the grasping power of an individual and requires an unduly large effort to master the problem. So here the implication of the program development is, instead of a human, if a machine could be writing or generating a program, then the slope of the curve would be linear. But why does the effort size curve becomes almost linear when the software engineering principles are deployed? Because here the software engineering principles extensively, they use the techniques which are specifically to overcome the human cognitive limitations. So here, the software engineer, they help to reduce the program complexity. So here the software engineering principles use 2 important techniques to reduce the problem complexity. One is abstraction and the other one is decomposition. So here the principle of abstraction, which implies that the problem can be simplified by omitting the irrelevant details. In other words, the main purpose of abstraction is to consider only those aspects of the problem that are relevant for the given purpose. So once this simple problem is solved, then by omitting the details can be taken into consideration to solve the next lower level abstraction, and so on. So here the abstraction is a powerful way of reducing the complexity of the problem. So the other approach to tackle the problem complexity is a decomposition. So in these techniques, a complex problem is divided into several smaller problems, and then the smaller problems are solved one by one. However, in this technique, any random decomposition of problem into smaller parts will not help. So here the problem has to be decomposed such that each component of the decomposite problem can be solved independently, and then the solution of the different components can be combined to get the full solution. So a good decomposition of a problem should minimize the interactions among various components. So if the different subcomponents are interrelated, then the different components cannot be solved separately, and the desired reduction in the complexity will not be realized. So here, a popular way to decompose the decomposition principle is we have to try to break a bunch of sticks tied together versus breaking them individually. So example use of decomposition principle is we understand a book better than the contents are organized into independent chapters compared to when everything is mixed up. So here, the software engineering program, which provides a unique blend of foundation course in the computer science and engineering. Sorry. Sorry, 1 minute. It is struck. Wait a minute. Okay, fine. I will remove the animations so that. So here, the software engineering program, which is going to provide a unique blend of foundational course in computer science and engineering and practical work through a series of projects. So here the projects provide excellent opportunities to develop the skills as a team player, so that to develop creative solutions to complex and challenging problems, and to implement these solutions and turn them into usable systems, and to work with the recent and existing software technologies. So to acquire the skills to develop a large program, exponential growth in complexity and difficulty level with size has to be more, and the ad hoc approach breaks down when the size of the software increases. Now, why study software engineering? Why we have to study software engineering? So I don't understand why this is not working. Okay. So here, The other definition for why study software engineering is because it has the ability to solve the complex programming problems. We know how to break the large projects into smaller and manageable parts and how to use the abstraction. Also here we learn the techniques of specification, designing, user interface development, testing, project management, etc. Now, let us see the third definition for why to study software engineering. Because to acquire skills to be a better programmer, high productivity, to increase the productivity, and for better quality problems. So several people, they hold the option that writing good quality programs is an art. So in this context, let us examine whether the software engineering is really a form of art or is it like to other engineering disciplines. So there exist several fundamental issues that set engineering disciplines such as software engineering and civil engineering apart from both science and art disciplines. So let us now examine where software engineering stands based on an investigation into these issues. So just as any other engineering discipline, software engineering, they make heavy use of the knowledge that has acquired from the experiences of large number of practitioners. So these past experiences have been systematically organized and wherever possible theoretically based on the theoretical basis to the empirical observations that have been provided. So whenever no reasonable theoretical justifications could be provided, then the past experiences we have been adopted as a rule of thumb. So in contrast, all scientific solutions are constructed through rigorous applications of the previous principles. As is usual in all engineering disciplines, in software engineering, several conflicting goals are encountered while solving a problem. So in such situations, several alternate solutions are the first proposed. So an appropriate solution is chosen out of these candidate solutions based on various trade-offs that need to be made on account of issue of cost, maintainability, and usability. So therefore, while arriving at the final solution, several iterations that are possible, and engineering disciplines such as software engineering makes use of only well understood and well documented principles. So here, art on the other hand is often based on making subjective judgments based on the qualitative attributes and using ill understood principles. So from the above, we can easily infer that software engineering is in many ways similar to other engineering disciplines such as civil engineering or electronics engineering. So if we analyze the evolution of the software development style over the last 60 years, we can easily notice that it has been evolved from an esoteric art to a craft form, and then has slowly emerged as an engineering discipline. So as a matter of fact, this pattern of evolution is not very difficult from the scene in other engineering disciplines. So irrespective of whether it is iron making or paper making or software development or building construction, evolution of technology has followed strictly similar patterns. So this pattern of technology development has semantically been shown in this particular figure. So it can be seen from the figure that every technology in the initial year starts with as a form of art. As time passes, it graduates to a craft and finally emerges as an engineering discipline. So let us illustrate this fact using an example. Consider that the evolution of the iron making technology. So in ancient times, only few people knew how to make iron. Those who know iron making, they kept it closely guarded secret. This esoteric knowledge got transferred from generation to generation as a family secret. And slowly over the time, technology graduated from an art to a craft, from where tradesmen shared their knowledge with their apprentice, and this knowledge continued to grow. So much later, through a systematic organization and documentation of knowledge and incorporation of scientific basis, modern steel making technology has been emerged. So this is the story of evolution of the software engineering discipline, which is not much different from general thing what we have discussed. So as we have already pointed out, in the early days of programming, there were good programmers and bad programmers. The good programmers, they knew certain principles or tricks that helped them write good programs, which they seldom shared with the bad programmers. And these programs written in later years were akin to a craft. So over the next several years, all the good principles or the tricks, what we call them, that were organized into the body of knowledge that forms the discipline of the software engineering. So here the software engineering principles are now being widely used in the industry, and new principles are still continuing to emerge at very rapid rate, making this discipline highly dynamic. So in spite of this wide acceptance, critics point out that many of the methodologies and guidelines developed by the software engineering discipline, they lack scientific basis. Yet there is no defining or there is no denying the fact that adopting software engineering techniques, they facilitate development of high quality software in a cost effective and time manner. So software engineering practices have been proven to be indispensable to the development of large software products, though exploratory styles are often used successfully to develop small programs such as those written by the students as an classroom assignment. At present, the software engineering appears to be almost among the few options that are available to tackle the present software crisis. But what exactly is the present software crisis is? What are the symptoms, causes, and possible solutions to understand the present software crisis? And consider the following facts. So here the expenses that organize all over the world are incurring the software purchases as compared to the expenses that are being incurred on the hardware purchases, which have been showing an worrying trend over the years. So if you can see in this figure, as can be seen in this figure, organizations are spending increasingly large portions of their budget on the software as compared to that of the hardware. So among all the symptoms of the present software crisis, the trend of increasing software cost is probably the most vexing. So not only are the software products becoming progressively more expensive than hardware, but they also present a host of other problems to the customers. because software products are difficult to alter, debug, and enhance. Use resource non-optionally. They often fail to meet the user requirements, are far from being reliable, frequently crash, and are often delivered late. So at present, many organizations are actually spending much more on the software than on the hardware. So if this trend continues, we might soon have a rather amusing scenarios. Not long ago, when we brought any hardware product, the essential software that ran on it came free with it. But unless some sort of revolution happens, of course, in not every distant future, hardware prices would become insignificant compared to software prices. When we buy any software product, the hardware on which the software runs would come free with the software. So the symptoms of software crisis are not hard to observe. But what are the factors that have contributed to the present software crisis? Apparently, there are many factors. The important ones being rapidly increasing problem size, lack of adequate training in software engineering techniques, increasing skill shortage, and low productivity improvements. So now what is the remedy for it? It is believed that a satisfactory solution to the present software crisis can possibly come from a spread of software engineering practices along with the developers, coupled with the future advancement to the software engineering discipline itself. So with this brief discussion on the evolution and impact on the discipline of the software engineering, in our next video, we examine some basic concepts which are pertaining to different types of software development projects that are undertaken by the software companies. That's all for now. Thank you. For more videos, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you.